Hello, family members. Hope you're having a nice day today. Oh boy, the world just won't stop spinning, will it? This is why I haven't made a video, except for the one I made a few days ago, in a while, is because every time that I want to go and make a video, I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much to say, there's so much to talk about. How do you manage that? How do you manage a world where there's just literally too much going on, you know? I realized how big of a problem this was the other day when I was talking to my parents. Um, Now, I will say my dad has been going through some serious cardiac issues, has been in and out of the ER and tests and yeah, so. Uh, he hasn't been as on top of the news as he would normally be, but he definitely has an autistic fixation on he must watch the nightly news every night, the national network news, either CBS or NBC. I don't know why ABC is never in the running, but it isn't. It just isn't. So, um, he's just very fixated on keeping up with current events. And I was talking to my parents the other night and talking about this issue, how there's so much going on. And I'm like, listing things that are going on. And I said, and of course, this was when the flotilla was still inbound to Gaza. And I think some of the ships had been intercepted, but not all of them, or something like that. We were really right in the middle of that whole thing. And I was, saying something about that to them, and my mom had no idea what I was talking about. I know that she's with somebody who watches the nightly news every night, and she had no idea that it was even going on. And this is something that's like a big enough deal that it's like there's been global protests and all this stuff. And, that wasn't even on her radar at all. And I think that's not that uncommon for this country. One of the many videos I wanted to make is why don't Americans care about the flotilla? You know, that's just one of so many issues that I could have made a video about. Trump going on and on about his, these urban areas being war zones, when really, if you want to see what a war zone looks like in the United States, I would go to southern West Virginia, South Appalachia in general. It's, I mean, they literally go in and just take the tops of mountains off. That's what mining coal is. So all these miles and miles of beautiful tree landscapes, and then you have these ugly scars where they've just removed a mountain and then filled in a valley, and that's that. And that's not even to mention, the omnipresent decay that you see anytime that you drive around rural West Virginia. Buildings just rot into nothing all over the place. Some of them newer, some of them older. But you can see where there were flashes of signs of life, and then it just went away. And that's West Virginia. Another another story I would love to have made a video on in the middle of all of this is how the healthcare system is so inadequate where my parents are. My mother needed to have a mammogram. She's a snowbird. She's here and there and back and forth and everything. And so she had her mammograms scheduled for the summer when she'd be up north in West Virginia. And then she was very, very ill the day that it was, actually scheduled. And she had to reschedule her appointment. And the soonest they could get her in West Virginia, I think this was July, August or July, was December. December. And she's like, yeah, but I'm not going to be there in December. So she got on the phone and called around and got some referrals moved around and blah, blah, blah. And the next day, she got her mammogram down here in Central Florida. Rural places like southern West Virginia or even central West Virginia, where my parents live, are a different world than states that have bigger metro areas. Even Ohio and Pennsylvania, which are adjacent to West Virginia, are just completely different. Because if something happens in the state of Ohio, you have a few of those big cities, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, that you can go to. Something happens in rural Pennsylvania, you can go to Pittsburgh, you can go to Philadelphia. Those big cities with all the services are available to you. We don't have that in West Virginia, and we're not the only state that's like that, okay? There are several states in this country that are way more in need of help from the federal government than Chicago or Portland or DC or wherever. Like, how frustrating it was for me to see those jerks sending these military people to go pick up trash in DC, when I know that there are places in rural mountainous areas where flash flooding has dispersed plastics and all sorts of trash all along every creek bed for miles and miles and miles, and there's no one who's going to take the time or the energy or the resources to clean that up. And they could do that. If they could clean up trash in DC where they don't need that, they could do that in, like, Lingo around there. I think it's technically Wayne County. I'm pretty sure it's Wayne County, but I can't say for certain. But I used to go out to this state park, Lingo, all the time, and you'd drive out on these winding roads, and you'd see all these beautiful valleys, these beautiful little mountain creeks, just filled with trash. All sorts of plastic bottles and just anything, toys, furniture, tires. There'd be places where the road was literally crumbling apart, and all they could really do was just put up, like, a sign and be like, hey, don't, go through here. People go in both directions at the same time. Osprey, what's the spice about, huh? Spicy. Hey, no spice. That's not nice. We don't like spice. We like good kitty. No spicy. Okay? What do you have to say for yourself? Oh, you are such a brat. Sorry for the little diversion there. Okay. But, it's just seeing those places wrecked apart, falling apart, the infrastructure to reach this wonderful park that had, like, these CCC, like Depression era construction. It was really cool. And, it's just out there rotten to nothing. People aren't there because there's nothing to be there for. That's why this keeps happening. Rural places don't get the support we need. And so what happens is people like me are forced to move. That's why I live in Florida. If my economic prospects had been better in West Virginia, that's probably where I'd live. But they weren't. And, there's just so many more opportunities down here, not just for like work, but like recreation, meeting people. Our rural places are being bled dry. And that's something that's always existing in the undercurrent of everything else that's going on. They're attacking our urban areas. Basically, the president is asking Texas to invade Illinois, which is like wild. And the undercurrent of that is, well, these urban areas duke it out. What about North Dakota? What about Montana? What about Alabama or uh, Georgia, rural Georgia? Georgia's not a good example. They've got some big cities, but like, any place where there's not big, huge cities, at least one, probably more than one big, huge city in the state, that is a state that's drowning. And one of the things that's going on right now that's wild is that Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out and been like, hey, the Republicans just don't have a healthcare plan. And if we don't fix this, then people's premiums are going to double. And it's kind of like, yeah, we've been saying that for a long time. It's nice that you finally fucking noticed, but okay. Glad you're on board here. Sorry, I thought about Georgia, and I think this video is too unfocused. I don't know. That's the problem. It's so hard to manage. I I don't know that I can do better than this. I think I need to just get this out. So I apologize. This video is not going to be more focused, I guess. But the fact of the matter is that it's overwhelming and it's easy to shut down. It's easy to give up. And that's why I think I got to power through this, guys. Sorry, I got to get through this because I think it's time for us to learn together as a family how to deal with this feeling of being overwhelmed. Because that's really, at the end of the day, that's the point. If you get to the point where you let yourself feel overwhelmed and then it makes you freeze and unable to act, then the fascists win automatically. Even if you're not sure what you're doing is the best or right thing, doing something is better than nothing in days like these. Inaction is an endorsement of the status quo, saying that I'm okay with things going the way that they're going. I'm not moved enough to do something. And I keep thinking over and over again, I hear people talk about the idea of being careful, what you say on social media, because maybe the regime will use it against you at some point, or blah, 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 blah. I want to be the kind of person that said it, that said the thing. I I wanna be an enemy of the state, I guess, if the way that they define enemy of the state is anyone who disagrees with them on any level. Like, when there are worse things than dying. There's worse things than becoming a political prisoner. There's worse things than being deported, being beaten, being starved, being imprisoned. There's worse things than all of that. And the worst thing they could do is kill me. And that's going to happen someday anyway. I don't want my legacy to be someone who was quiet. I want to be on the right side of history. And if that makes me a target, then so be it, you know? That's out of my hands. I'm going to stand up and say what I believe, what I feel is moral and right, you know? I'm going to stand up and say we have to not let ourselves get distracted from the big picture, but we also have to not let ourselves get distracted from the small picture. At the same time, we need to be putting some of our attention on the flotilla that's currently going to Israel and the Conscience and the other boats that are going with it. These are people who are literally putting their bodies on the line because we still haven't gotten all of our Americans back from the last flotilla. They still have Chris Smalls, as last I heard, and I don't think they're treating him very well because he's black. I mean, the racists are acting racist. I mean, it's really weird. Huh? It's like you keep saying the IDF, the Israeli regime, is a racist regime. They kidnap a bunch of activists in international waters illegally. Some of them are Americans. When they give back some of these activists, they give us back all of the white ones and keep the one black guy. Very interesting, right? We need to be keeping our eye open on stories like that. We can't forget that Trump is wrong about our urban areas being a war zone, but he's not wrong that there are places in the United States that kind of look like a war zone. If you look it up, there's a place in downtown, I think it was Fairmont, West Virginia, what passes for sort of a city in West Virginia. And right in the downtown area, a building just crumbled down to dust, rotted into nothing. If you saw the video, the pictures, the video without context, you could think it was a war zone. There are people in West Virginia who do not have running water. There are people in other states that they're living the same life. There's literally nothing. And we have to keep our eye on all of that. We have to give ourselves space to rest and process too. It's a incredible tightrope to walk, but we must walk it because freezing, becoming overwhelmed to the point that you can't do anything, that just plays right into the fascist hands. All right, family members, I will let you go. Osprey, are you going to spice one more time? No? Okay. Bye, family members. I love you. Bye.